What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the Rams Skinny here on the LA Football Network, live on the Mighty 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you, as always, for making us a part of your day. We are 1 week past the NFL draft, or I guess it ended Saturday, so we're close to 1 week. We're 1 week past the first round and simultaneously the second round and third round, day 2, I should say. So we are not quite moving fully past the draft yet. We're going to talk some undrafted free agents because you never know. There's some gems always in these UDFA classes that no one knows about. So we'll give you some insight into some of these players and what they can mean for this Rams team. Joining me as always, the better half of this show, Mr. Ryan Skinny T. Anderson. Brother, how you doing today on Friday?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Friday's the end of the week, and that's always exciting.
Yeah, Friday. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's Friday.
So nothing statement ever.
Yeah, I was like, can I say something analytical?
I guess what I should say is I'm looking forward to this Friday. I gotta say.
There we go. Okay, you got it. You made it to Friday.
Yeah.
Everyone out there listening made it to Friday. Hope everyone had a great week. But the weekend is upon us, so looking forward to that. It's a weird. Is it like rainy down by you right now?
Yeah, I tried to have my coffee on my deck this morning, and there was little sprinkles, so I headed back inside.
It's like a weird, misty, foggy rain day. So, my daughter's sick. She's had a fever for a few days. My wife actually is heading out to go to a concert for the weekend. So I'm home alone with the 4-year-old, with a sick 4-year-old trying to record. Hopefully, we'll see if she makes a guest appearance here at some point. But anyway. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Gets you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Hope people maybe have won some money over the draft, or maybe you've been betting on the NHL or NBA playoffs or baseball. They got it all over at betonline.ag. Make sure to use that promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Make sure to tell them the guys at the Rams Skinny sent you. All right, 16 undrafted free agents, a little less than last year. Last year was like 105. So a little less, but still a nice heavy boatload when you consider 10 draft picks, 16 UDFAs. That's, I'm not a mathematician, but 26 added players to this roster. Obviously, there'll be cut downs once training camp begins, but for now, the list is here. So let's, I'm not going to just read these 16 names. But I'll just say this: 3 receivers added, 3 defensive backs, or I guess you could say 4, 1 corner and 3 listed as DBs, and a safety. So 5 defensive backs, I guess. Couple linebackers, couple defensive tackles, and then you got 2 offensive linemen and a tight end. So a nice wealth of diversity across the UDFAs. How do you want to do this? Do you want to go kind of player by player? Or is there like one specifically that stood out to you that maybe you've been able to dive into? You want to talk about?
Yeah, I think we should just talk about the guys that we think will have the chance of actually making this 53-man roster, I suppose.
Yeah.
I always get excited about this list just because there are people that you never dig into. You don't come across these guys on lists, so it's just a brand new slate of names, guys to get to know. And unfortunately, not all of them are going to stick around for the long haul. Maybe end up on the practice squad. But the Rams have done a pretty good job of finding some UDFAs that end up contributing at least to their rosters. I think Greg Gaines a UDFA.
No, Greg Gaines was a 4th round pick.
No.
But we can pretend.
Yeah, sure.
Great impact.
Yeah, I think the name that jumps off right away is Drake Stoops. I think everybody's super excited about the Stoops making onto the roster.
Stoop kid's going to leave his stoop. Yeah.
Obviously the famous name Bob Stoops is his dad, a great coach at Oklahoma. He ended up playing at Oklahoma, but at first glance, I thought, this kid, nepotism, makes the Oklahoma roster because of who his dad is. No, not the case. Did not get a scholarship. He was a walk-on to Oklahoma State. He had scholarship offers from other colleges. Iowa, namely, is one of the big ones. But he wanted to walk on. He wanted to play for the Sooners, and that's what he did. So that's always something you got to like, that kind of grit, determination take a step back, take a, not a guaranteed roster spot, and made it on.
Love it. I mean, if last year's phrase or word describing this team was better than expected that we use, I think this year it's grit and lunch pail. And this is another gritty, bring your lunch pail to work kind of guy in Stoops. Because yeah, you mentioned it, a guy that has the lineage, but had to work for it. Wasn't just given a spot, had to walk on and ended up having a huge impact for the Oklahoma offense. A nice kind of twitchy receiver that definitely brings some similarities to what this receiving room has. I mean, I'm not saying he's Cooper Kupp or anything like that, but definitely a guy that can play in the slot and do kind of those types of things. So do the Rams have too much of that already? We'll see. But I think he's definitely a name that would be fun to, see how his progression happens with this receiving class and with this room. So,
well, let's talk about the wide receiver room right now.
Yeah.
They've got Tutu Atwell. He kind of fell off the back end of the starting roster towards the end of the year, off the first string. You got Ben Skoranek, who's essentially just been a special teams contributor the last couple of years. Do you think there is room that, Stoops or one of these other guys? We've got JJ Lapp out of SUNY Cortland, and Sam, I'm going to say...
Yeah, I'll let you say it.
Wiglas?
That sounds right.
Wiglas out of from Ohio. He actually he made the Ohio State roster, but then transferred to the Bobcats for his last 2 seasons.
Fun fact about Wiglas, sorry to cut you off, his 2 favorite pro athletes, LeBron James and Cooper Kupp. So he came to the right place, come to LA.
Yeah. If you want to learn, as we saw with Puka Nacua, who just kind of became Cooper Kupp's shadow in his rookie season. If you stick with learning from that guy, you do yourself some favors. So do you think there's a chance that they move on, the Rams move on from specifically Tutu Atwell before his rookie deal is over? We saw that happen with Van Jefferson and Cam Akers last season.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you wrapped the room in general, because this room is interesting because, a lot of fans I hear, and, I'm not saying they're wrong, but I think the perception from them, because of how great Puka Nacua was last year and because of, Cooper Kupp being Cooper Kupp, that this is like a top receiving room in football. To me, after Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, I mean, it's a pretty immense drop off. I love Demarcus Robinson. Obviously, he became much more involved last year towards the end of the season, and he's a great red zone threat. I mean, but when you just look at a receiving room as a totality, I mean, there's a lot to be desired. And I'm not saying that it can't improve. Obviously, going into last year, we didn't know Puka Nacua was going to be Puka Nacua. So, I mean, that there can be that next guy. Like, is that going to be, Jordan Whittington, who they drafted in the 6th round out of Texas? Like, you never know. Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick, but as of right now, May 3rd, it's hard to say this is like one of the top rooms in football. And to answer your question, after those top 2 spots, I think it's wide open. I mean, Demarcus Robinson obviously signed a 1-year deal, but I don't think he's necessarily, guaranteed that wide receiver 3 spot. I think right now that's where we'd put him. Tutu Atwell, as you mentioned, like, looked a lot more involved beginning of last year and then really tapered off, and we still haven't seen him live up to the hype of that 2nd round pick. Benny Sco has become more of a relegated to special teams and, just in situations. And then the rest is, they have Tyler Johnson back and then these 4 rookies. And so I think it's really, it's wide open after those first 2 guys. And we're going to need to see a lot in order for this room to really show me that they are one of the better rooms, because unfortunately, I hate to say it, but they're 1 injury away from being not a good room. I mean, and they were still, and I know everyone will freak out because Puka Nacua played 4 or 5 games without Cooper Kupp, and obviously they did okay. So it's not like the world is ending if that happens, but obviously if you can improve and be better, you want to. So I guess long-winded answer to your question is, I think they certainly could move on from Tutu if one of these 4 rookies really shows out.
Yeah. And, going back to those UDFAs, Stoops specifically had almost 1,000 yards receiving last year, 84 receptions, 10 touchdowns, first team all Big 12. The Big 12 isn't what it used to be, but that's impressive numbers for a guy that's 5'9", 185 pounds. Sticky hands, slot guy, short area quickness. So we'll keep an eye on him over the next few weeks and months, but an exciting name nonetheless.
Yeah, and Wiglas isn't a very big guy either. So they kind of, at least on the UDFA front, definitely went with they're more. And JJ Lapp, I don't believe is either. I think he's 6 foot, but he's only like 180, 185. So, Jordan Whittington is a bigger guy who they drafted, but definitely on the UDFAs went with their kind of slot archetype that they kind of have built the roster with in terms of receiving type. So McVay definitely has a type. That's kind of always what they've been, right? I mean, you look back to all his receiving classes, or not even classes, but just their starting guys. I mean, Bobby Trees, Cooper Kupp. I mean, all these guys are very similar body types and builds. Tutu Atwell is kind of the one outlier in terms of smallness. And then I guess Demarcus Robinson is their bigger guy, but they've never really had that like Calvin Johnson type, which, that's a bad name because there's only one Calvin Johnson, but like that type of 6'4", 215 type receiver. So can Jordan Whittington become that? I mean, we'll see. He showed flashes at Texas. We talked about it a little bit last show. Averaging 12, 13 yards per reception as a big body guy, but obviously didn't have like 1,000-yard seasons. So we'll see it at the pro level.
Yeah. So any guys on the offense, any other offensive standouts we have here? We got a couple of offensive linemen. Again, this is defense heavy, kind of like the draft.
Yeah. They did, what'd they do? 5, 6, 8. Well, I guess is it even, or is my math just terrible? 7 or 8.
I got 6 offense and then I guess 10 defense.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know where I got 8. I'm like looking at it right now. 6 offense. Yes. 3 receivers, a tight end, and 2 offensive linemen. Yeah, I think, I want to mention Justin Dadich just because, we covered him at USC. A lot of experience for this guy. Enrolled at SC in 2018. So with that extra COVID year, basically was in college for 6 years and played all over the offensive line. So I think, as a UDFA, there's never a high expectation, but this is a dude that's played at a top program in USC a lot of games. I mean, started every game last year, started every game the year before that as a guard, before going to center this year, has played tackle some. So, I mean, he's played all over the offensive line and played a lot. So you get a guy that you didn't have to use draft capital for that has started just down the road against premier programs. I mean, started against Notre Dame, started against Washington and Oregon and Utah, and, played in big time games and big time moments. So, I love that pickup. You got to keep him home. He's a great guy. I've met him, a couple times, obviously in media availability and stuff. And he was a great leader on the offensive line. So, anytime you can get a guy with that kind of experience that, again, there's no expectation for him. He's a UDFA, but I mean, I think he's going to surprise people and make this roster. Of all the guys on this roster, I think he has a really good shot because we talked about it, right? The offensive line they invested heavily in the starting 5. It looks great. The depth after that is, I'm not saying it's bad depth, but it's really wide open. I mean, it's anyone's game. It's not like they have 3 to 5 guys slotted as like, okay, these are the backups. Like really it's anyone's game. And I think Dadich can be that because of the experience, but also because of the versatility that he's played every spot along the offensive line. And clearly the Rams have shown that they value that in an offensive lineman that can play all over. I mean, just this year, they're moving their draft pick from guard to center. So it's definitely something that they value.
Yeah, you gotta love that kind of high level experience, that much experience. He's probably gonna be getting his AARP card here at some point soon after playing that many years, 6 seasons in college. It's funny to look at some of these ages of these. You got the COVID plus transfer years.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the draft class is super old, including this one for the Rams. The only other note, we've got Blake Larson out of Augustana. Any guesses where Augustana University is?
Oh, I should know. Georgia?
No, close. That's a good guess. Not close though. It's South Dakota is where it is.
South Dakota. I would not have guessed that. Okay.
Hard to find information on Augustana Vikings football, but Blake Larson, 6'7", 300 pounds.
Good body.
from South Dakota. That's a good farming Swedish kind of vibe from that.
Yeah.
So
Sign me up.
Appeals to guys like us. So
and he was a Viking, so very fitting.
Yeah, exactly.
Swedish farmer that was a Viking. I mean, that's about as South Dakota as you can get right there. Midwest.
Yeah, 100%.
North Midwest.
So definitely rooting for that guy.
Yeah.
Switching over to defense, you got any highlights off the top of your head for the defense?
I'm not. I don't even know if I want to try this guy's name. Maybe you've
I've been practicing it. I know the guy.
Julie, go ahead.
All right, I gotta look at it so I can say it phonetically. This is what I've learned about the names of the Polynesian sort. Tuli Latuli Gasanoa.
Oh, that's okay. That sounds easier than Latuli Gasanova. Noah.
Gasanoa, yeah.
Latuli Gasanoa. Okay, love that. But no, I mean, big guy that add another defensive line. I think what stands out is he was Washington's Defensive Player of the Year 3 years in a row. So, Greg Gaines came from Washington. They had success with Greg Gaines. We've seen other guys play that position. I'm drawing a blank on his name now. Right before Greg Gaines, he was drafted to Tampa. Big dude who was drafted in the first round, like 8th overall. I'll remember later, but he's had a great career so far. And so now this guy goes undrafted, but he was their Defensive Player of the Year on a national title contending team. They didn't have a stout defense. They were definitely ran by that offense and Michael Penix and Roma Dunze, or as Mel Kiper Jr. say, Romo Dunze, or however he said it. That was just driving us crazy. It was just Romo Dunze that was just driving us crazy all draft. But yeah, Tuli I think is a nice pickup here. They need more depth on that defensive line. They obviously addressed it during the draft, which we were very pleased with. But guy that won Defensive Player of the Year for his team 3 years in a row. I mean, that speaks volumes, whether it's play, whether it's leadership, whether it's work ethic, whether it's bring that lunch pail to work kind of attitude. That's what we want here for the Rams. So I love the Tuli pickup.
All grit and determination. I'm sticking with defensive line. I think this is a great spot where one of these guys can carve out a little playing time for themselves, just because we talked about it heading into the draft, even after the draft. You're looking at Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner as your starters, and then Bobby Brown, Tyler Davis. Then you're looking at Desjuan Johnson and Laurel Murchison. These guys' jobs aren't safe. They didn't really earn a lot of playing time last season. Obviously, Aaron Donald's gone, so you got that big gap. So I'm going with Anthony Ludlow though, or Goodlow, Anthony Goodlow from Oklahoma State Cowboys. He's transferred from Tulsa, where he had some success as a pass rusher. 14 sacks in 3 seasons with them. He moves over to Oklahoma State, but really shines as a run defender. So I could see him working in a spot for himself. 6'5", 283. So one of the bigger guys for the Rams defensive line there. So that's a guy I got my eye on.
Love it. Yeah. Good size, and anything to add on that defensive front, I think is worth doing. So another name throw at you. A lot of Michigan players obviously got a lot of shine this draft for good reason. National champions, their head coach now in the NFL with the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. Rams drafted one in Blake Corum. You have a great article up we'll plug on Blake Corum of just being a good human being. And I think that's a great addition for the Rams and kind of what the Rams look for in the character of players, not just lunch pail mentality, but also your character. Blake Corum checks that. But one guy that did not get drafted that is on the Rams was Josh Wallace, defensive back. Allowed only 21 catches last year, 0 touchdowns. So on a defense that was dominant in the Big Ten, and a major reason why they won the Natty. I know everyone loves to talk about J.J. McCarthy, who went 10th overall. They won that Natty because of that defense and the trenches. And a defensive back in that only allowed 21 catches, when I'm sure he was getting targeted more because the other DBs or guys were getting drafted high. That's pretty solid to get as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, and you look at the guy that he was playing across from that got drafted highly. I have trouble with his last name. Sainristril.
something like
You know,
that.
the other guy. When you have a more dominant cornerback, sometimes quarterbacks will target the other side of the field. But this guy was just as shut down. Just allowing a handful of catches over a long season. So that's cool. Staying in the defensive backfield, my guy there was Kenny Logan Jr. from Kansas.
You love your Kansas and Kansas State guys, I feel.
I don't generally go for Kansas
there.
guys. It's that beautiful white helmet with that big rock chalk Jayhawk on the side there. I guess that attracts me. But what I like about this guy is he was everywhere in terms of tackling. He had over 300 tackles in the last 3 seasons. 113, I think, is where he topped off a couple of years ago. So in terms of what the Rams have started looking for in their defensive backfield, this is it. This is the kind of tough hitting guy that can hit in the open backfield and rack up those tackles. So that's why I like him. That's why I went with that guy.
Love it.
Anybody else for you on defense?
Yeah, real quick. If you're on radio, we got to take a quick break. So thanks all for hanging out. We'll continue this podcast on LAFBnetwork.com. Just search for Rams Skinny. So thanks all for tuning in. Yeah, I think the last guy maybe I'll mention, you can throw it out, but sticking with DBs, because like we said, they added, 5 of them, 5 of them, is Charles Woods, DB out of SMU, allowed the lowest passer rating ever by a Big 12 cornerback. The guy he beat was all the way back from 2015, Xavier Howard, who's been pretty damn good in the NFL, obviously. So, he played some at West Virginia, and then obviously transferred to SMU. So his 21 season, and I think he's regressed maybe some, which is why he ended up being undrafted. But when you have a season like that where you put up the lowest passer rating allowed, there's obviously talent there and skill there. And if they're able to develop him and getting with Aubrey Pleasant and with this secondary, which again, they've added pieces, but it's kind of a wide open room also in the secondary. Like it's, there's not like, you're not coming into a team that has like 5 slotted starters. It's like, some dudes and then just a lot of guys that are hungry. So if he brings that lunch pail over to LA, he's got a shot. So yeah, like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one, because you think about small school guys, and what you want to see from them is being truly dominant. Not that Southern Methodist University, I don't want to besmirch the good name of the Mustangs, but they did a good enough job of that on their own. You're not playing Alabama every week. You're not playing LSU every week, but you want to see a guy that just is dominant when he's playing those kind of East Carolinas and things like that. But let's take a second and talk about the defensive back room in general and kind of the state of it. In relation to like who's going to make the roster, who's not going to make the roster. I mean, the starters seem pretty clear cut. But you think about Quentin Lake as a starter, he kind of has to take that big next step to be the starting nickelback or star or what have you. Kobe Durant, good enough. He earned some starting roles, but then after that, Darren Kendrick, nobody. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's obviously a room that we've talked about a lot, and last year was probably the weaker spot of the defense. Anytime you have Aaron Donald, that's always going to be your strength, and Ernest Jones, obviously, in the linebacking room is great too. So, I think right now, like you mentioned it, you got Tre'Davious White and Darius Williams are your 2 starting outside corners. Cam Curl and Russ Yeast, you're probably your 2 starting safety. Although we talked about on draft day, I think Cameron Kinchins will have an absolute shot at earning that starting role next to Curl. So we got the 2 Cams in the back potentially. And then Quentin Lake probably as your kind of nickel star money, kind of all over rangy type player. And then after that, it's pretty wide open, but it's a deep room when you look at just number of bodies. You mentioned Kobe Durant, Darren Kendrick, Jason Taylor. We mentioned all these undrafted free agents they just added with 5 more coming in. And so, there's a lot of opportunity here, but also, unfortunately, probably a few of these guys are not going to be on this roster just because of sheer numbers. Like how many, when you look at defensive back period, so corners and safeties, what do you think they keep 10?
you got to have a lot of guys to, make sure, it's the one position they say you can't have too many of. So I think that they did a good job of adding in undrafted free agents, because they only picked up Cam Kitchens in the draft. So I think it's smart. There might be a little bit of rotation, but I think that the front is the first string is solid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look at it right now, so there's 18 guys right now. 10, I think, is probably a minimum. So we could see 10 to 12 make the roster probably. So, there's a healthy competition to make the squad, and we'll see who does it. So, but yeah. Anything else you want to add about these UDFAs or anything?
The last one I have my eye on is Omar Spates at LSU. Partly nice. Just because I think there's a lot of movement that can happen with the linebackers. Christian Roseboom, God bless him. Jake Hummel, Troy Reeder. It gets a little bit hairy after Ernest Jones there. So, and Spates is a guy that has a ton of high level experience at LSU, and then previously with Oregon State, and just a guy that's always around the ball. Nothing off the charts in terms of athletic traits, but he has a really fast first step, especially for a dude his size. So, another name I'm just going to keep an eye on that I could see, climbing the ladder, earning a roster spot. And really at this point, when we're talking UDFAs, we're looking at special teams, which was a big black eye on a scrappy Los Angeles Rams 2023 team, where they just had holes all over the place. They let a couple of punt returns, one that costed them the game against Baltimore. So, still you gotta have those guys, and they're the definition of the lunch pail guys, because they're working the hardest. They're trying to earn a spot, trying to keep themselves in the conversation for the Rams.
Yeah, I'm glad you ended with Spates, because played 4 years at Oregon State before transferring over to LSU this last year, and a lot of success. I think he finished 9th in tackles at Oregon State. And when USC played Oregon State up in Corvallis in 22, that 17-14 game that took a last drive from Caleb Williams to win it, at the end of regulation, basically, Spates led Oregon State in tackles with 8 tackles. That he was all over the field, was a huge force in why USC had, 10 points going into a minute 30 left in the game before they were able to get down and win it. So when you have that kind of high level experience, Oregon State has had great defenses during Jonathan Smith's tenure. Obviously he's at Michigan State now, but while he was at Oregon State, they really had really solid defenses, and he was kind of the face of that. And then now obviously playing last season at LSU, which has always been kind of known for defense overall in the totality as the program. So another great, I mean, that was the theme, right? We keep saying it, but lunch pail, grit, experience, all the guys they've added. I mean, outside of Kinchins and a few other, all these guys have 4+ years of collegiate experience. So they didn't get some 2-year redshirt guys that played maybe, 20 games. I mean, all these guys have a lot of experience and that they bring to the table, and they'll have an impact potentially immediately. So love that pickup too.
Yeah, I if you think we're being a little bit cute with the lunch pail thing, I compiled a list of the Rams draft picks from this year, and just all of the superlatives that draft analyzers used of like, just listing the traits of like this guy, Blake Corum worked for his dad, his landscaping business during the COVID year. Like, like just, team captain stuff, just going through this list of, coach says he's the hardest worker on the team. Like every single one of them. I couldn't find any on the kicker, but the kicker is jacked. So he's a gym rat at the very least. We don't know if he's a good dude or a hard worker. His
teammates attend his birthday though. That's the important thing.
Did he have a birthday?
His teammates, never mind. Oh, draft day reference. Never mind.
Oh, sorry. I gotta watch that movie.
Unbelievable. We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, I'm fired.
But yeah, no. I mean, it's a great point. They're definitely a theme, and the Rams have always kind of had that. Like they find a theme, and that's what they roll with, kind of in their strategy and stuff. And so this is clearly their trend and theme right now, and they stuck with it. And good class, good UDFA class. So to end it, we listed all these guys. seemingly every year for most teams, one guy, sometimes more, but typically one guy does make the roster. Who in your mind has the best shot of these 16 to make it?
I'm going to put my money on Spates on that one. Next one will be Anthony Goodlow. That's 1-2 for me. One, just because I think they're probably the top players from the UDFA class, and I also think that those two rooms have the most opportunity for them to kind of carve out a spot for themselves.
Yeah, I like that. Just to be different, because I think Spate is probably the top one, but I'll go Justin Dedich just because. Maybe just because I like him, but like I said, the versatility I think means a lot for this offensive line, and the experience. 35 starts over the last 2 years is a big one as well. So, yeah, I'll go Justin Dedich.
Right on. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, there you have it. Well, 16 UDFAs added to this Rams team. Got plenty of content about these guys up on LAFBnetwork.com. Make sure to check that out. If you like the Rams skinny and you haven't yet, we certainly would appreciate if you hit that like or subscribe button on YouTube. You can find it at Rams LAFB or LAFBnetwork.com has all of our stuff, or we are anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all that fun stuff. So for Ryan Skinny T. Anderson, I am Ryan Dyrud. Thank you, as always, Ramley, for hanging out with us. Have a great weekend. Talk to everyone next week.